Hello and welcome to the Responsive Family Sleep Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Hawley, holistic sleep coach, lactation consultant, peaceful parenting educator, and mom. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by all the conflicting sleep info, frustrated with sleep information that just plain felt wrong, or searched desperately for a truly gentle and responsive sleep approach, then you are in the right place. In each episode, we'll be answering your most pressing baby and toddler sleep questions, busting those sleep myths, and helping you understand truly developmental, biologically normal baby and toddler sleep, plus encouraging you to trust your intuition along the way. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about what babies and toddlers need to sleep well, and how it's not really what society or our mainstream ways we think about sleep tells us that it is. So if you've spent any time reading about baby sleep from like your typical sources, right, I think there's a pretty strong consensus out there in sort of mainstream sleep world, which can otherwise be known as sleep training culture world, but that's, a topic for another day. And that is right, that babies need to be able to fall asleep independently, sleep through the night, and generally sleep 12 hours, right? That's sort of the consensus for good sleep, right? Except that's not really how most babies sleep, and that's not really a measure of good sleep, right? That is a measure of convenient sleep. But if we want to think about what actually supports good quality sleep, right? Restful, restorative, good quality sleep, we need to think about what do humans need to get that sleep? And how do the things that we do around sleep either help or maybe hinder that process? So, at its most basic level, for a human to get good quality sleep, and this is babies and toddlers, yes, but this is big kids. This is you as an adult. This is anyone across the lifespan, right? So we need to be tired. We need to be able to relax, and we need to feel safe and secure. And while there's all sorts of nuance and strategies and things around these different pieces, at its most basic level, that is what we need for good quality sleep. We need to be tired. We need to be able to relax and downregulate our nervous system, and we need to feel safe and secure. So, totally simple, right? Except those are huge things, so let's unpack them a little bit here. So, you need to be tired. And this is, kind of a no-duh statement, right? Like, that seems really obvious. But if you're not tired, you're not going to get good quality sleep. And this is speaking to our sleep pressure. So do we have enough sleep pressure to need to sleep for long, sustained periods of time? And do we have a healthy, strong, stable circadian rhythm that is helping us know it's nighttime, to release melatonin, right? To have the right physiological supports for good quality nighttime sleep. Now, where this can be tricky is that everybody doesn't need the same amount of sleep. Everyone doesn't need the same amount of time to build adequate sleep pressure. And so if we're looking at sort of generic sleep charts, they tend to skew towards the high end of sleep needs. And your baby has low sleep needs, that's not going to work. Right? Your baby might genuinely not be tired enough to get good quality sleep, or you're expecting too much sleep. They need something different, right? So we have to think about not only what are their sleep needs, but then how is that sleep distributed, right? Maybe they're one that really just needs short naps to recharge throughout the day. And so long naps could actually make it harder for them to get good sleep at night. Or maybe they're a kiddo who needs a shorter than average night to be ready for the day, but is going to take pretty sound naps, right? Both those kiddos could be average sleep kids, babies, toddlers, but their sleep might be distributed really differently. And so we have to look at our little's needs and the context, right? If we're really stuck on a 7:30 bedtime, but their last nap is going too late in the day, then they're not going to be tired for bedtime, right? So we have to look at the context as well. So lots of variation there with making sure your kiddo is tired enough to get good quality sleep. And unfortunately, in the first few years, this is ever changing, right? Because their sleep needs change. The time they're comfy awake to build enough sleep pressure changes, and how their naps play out changes. And so it's a little bit of a, as soon as you get comfy in one spot, it might be time to reassess. So that's tired, right? Lots of play and experimenting there. Now relaxed, right? In order to sleep well, you have to get into that rest and digest nervous system state. And so if you're not able to relax for any reason, and there are many, right, then your nervous system is going to stay amped up, or your baby or your toddler's nervous system is going to stay amped up. And that's going to make it harder to fall asleep, right? Just like it's harder to fall asleep if you're not tired, harder to stay asleep if you're not tired, but also harder to fall asleep if your nervous system is amped up, and harder to stay asleep if your nervous system is amped up, and less restorative sleep, right? So we need to be able to get down into this rest and digest state. You need to be able to get your little one to relax. And so this could be about the level of energy leading into bedtime, right? This could be about things that stress them out, them being dysregulated. It could be about things that amp them up, but in like a joyful way, but in a kind of wild way, right? Like we're getting too much high energy play right before bedtime and they need more time to calm down. It could be because we're using non-responsive sleep training strategies and we're stressing them out kind of purposefully right before bedtime, right? Stress undermines sleep. Full stop. Like that is just a true statement. Stress undermines sleep at every age. And relaxation supports good quality sleep. So another reason that kiddos might have trouble relaxing has more to do from the sensory side of things, right? Things that are specific sensory sensitivities, specific sensory needs that they have to help them downregulate into sleep. And that's another one where that can take some experimenting and curiosity to figure out what does this little need in order to be able to bring that nervous system down so they can fall asleep. So we have tiredness, we have relaxation, safety, and security, right? Sleep is our most vulnerable state, right? It is something where we are very vulnerable. And so we have to feel safe and secure. And for our littles, that can come with different needs in order to feel safe and secure around sleep. And that, of course, is age dependent and temperament dependent. But if we are not intentionally creating positive associations with their sleep routines, positive connected associations with their sleep space, right? If we're not thinking about what do they need to feel safe around sleep, then we're working at counter purposes with getting better quality sleep. So for many babies, that means sleeping close to you. For many young children, that could still mean sleeping close to you. It means really scaffolding them if we're working on separate sleeping, right? And helping them feel safe in that process, which can mean slowing down, right? Taking it one step at a time, going at their pace, really meeting them where they're at, not imposing this kind of arbitrary timeline that we feel like they should be able to meet. Because if we're pushing them too far past their comfort zone, we're going to push them too much into alarm and out of safety. So there's a lot here, right? There's a lot that each of these kind of simple things, tiredness, relaxation, safety and security, they're really kind of fundamental concepts, but they also still have a lot of nuance, a lot of experimentation, a lot of curiosity, and a lot of layers that that it's why it seems so simple, and yet it can be quite complicated with some littles to get them to sleep, right? To sleep their best version of sleep. What their best version of sleep is might not look like what somebody else's best version of sleep is. And that's because temperament is a big piece here, right? Some babies find sleep so much easier than others. And while there are pieces that we can be very strategic about and set them up for optimal conditions, there are also those pieces that are just who they are and make it, different between babies. It can be harder for some babies to feel those tiredness cues and communicate them to you. It can be harder for many babies to relax, right? To let go, especially those alert, kind of on the move babies, or those highly, highly sensitive babies. And sort of likewise with that, it can be harder for some of them to feel safe and secure in what would be objectively pretty typical sleep conditions, right? So they might need a lot more touch, a lot more co-regulation, a lot more closeness to be able to relax into sleep, to feel that safety, to relax into sleep. So very simple and yet very complicated needs that our littles have. And I just encourage you to remember that your baby is an individual. So really looking at what their individual needs are across these kind of 3 big areas, and be curious and don't be afraid to experiment and see what works and what doesn't, and think about it from different perspectives, because sometimes we get really locked into our own heads of what we think it should look like, or how we think how we're interpreting things, that we cut off avenues that can really help everyone get better sleep. And then apply these to yourself, right? I'm a big component. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, or reading my blogs or anything, worked with me, I'm a big component of us adults taking care of our own sleep alongside optimizing our little sleep. And so think about how you might apply these things to your own sleep, and what can you do that might help your own quality of sleep right along with your littles. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode left you feeling more informed, confident, and encouraged on your sleep journey. And just a reminder before you go that nothing in this episode is individualized to your specific sleep situation, nor is it to be taken as medical advice. Take what resonates, ignore what doesn't, and check with your healthcare provider about any medical concerns. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast so that you'll never miss an episode. And take a moment to rate, review, or share an episode you love on social media. All of that helps parents just like you find me, this podcast, and this gentle and responsive sleep information. I'll see you next time.